I'm having a bad hair day and I'm wearing white on a white background, so a pop of colour doesn't hurt. Today we are talking about Decolonial Marxism by Walter Rodney. I spoke about when I bought this book, and someone commented, I hope you talk about this book when you're done with it. You, commenter, you're welcome. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Decolonial Marxism by Walter Rodney today. It's a single book video. Oh my god. But if you want to get this book, a link to it is going to be in the description down below, to bookshop.org, a company that works with local bookshops that kicks them a little bit of money every time you buy something from bookshop.org. Alternatively, get this book from your local library. I think you should do that. So if you watch the video where I spoke about buying this book, you'll know that Walter Rodney is probably best known for his amazing book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Fantastic book, highly recommend it, should be top of your must-read list, especially if you're interested in politics. Now, Decolonial Marxism is a collection of essays by Walter Rodney, which is a little bit more specific, and it talks about general cases of how countries should decolonize and how they should do it in a socialist way. Walter Rodney, well-known socialist, well-known Marxist. Now, a little bit of background to this. Many people who aren't from Europe and are socialists and want to decolonize and want to revolutionize, especially at the time that Rodney was writing in the 70s and 60s, many people during this time felt Marxism is too European-centric. We can't use that in our efforts to decolonize. Rodney, however, doesn't believe that's necessarily the case. He touches on many things in this book, and I'm not going to be super specific because I could never do justice to the stuff Rodney says, but I can give you brief overviews and examples. So he talks about, in the early part of the book, how Marxism isn't supposed to be a still unchanging concept, how Marxism should be applied, but then applied in a way that is suitable to your location, suitable to your locale. And Rodney argues that really, really well. He then goes on to give examples of how Marxism isn't used properly or effectively by groups that are going through decolonialism, and how the bourgeoisie and the petty bourgeoisie are still in control and they kind of misuse Marxism, and how supposedly Marxist groups, because of this influence of there being Marxism in decolonialism by bourgeoisie groups, kind of have undermined the decolonial effort properly because of almost this bone the groups have been thrown, if that makes sense. An example of this is how he talks about Tanzania and how, initially people were like, yes, this is how we go through the decolonial revolution of Tanzania, how we grow Tanzania. But then the people who initially did that see the groups that are really fighting for it and be like, actually, that's not in our best interest. Oftentimes, the people on top, the proper use of Marxism isn't in our best interest. So here's how we're going to throw you a bone for it. And that's kind of towards the end of the book. It's, again, I could never really do justice to this in the way I am talking about it. Another thing which I really thought was interesting was how he talks about Marxism in the third world. And if you are, someone who is a minority immigrant, you might see this, that people in your family who are older than you, who may have been around at the time where decolonialism started or was in its early stages in that country, they have this very off-putting relationship with Marxism, because when these countries decolonized, some of them, the people who were on top leading the decolonial charge, still had links to the bourgeois of the previous colonizers, and how they were taught by the previous colonizers of Britain or Europe how to run a country in a way that the colonial country did it, and most of the time these countries were capitalist, imperialist countries. So those in charge and those fighting for the liberation were still doing it in a way where once liberation happened, they would replace the colonizers essentially. And so stuff like socialism and Marxism were demonized even by the people who were revolutionaries against the original colonizers, and how these governments that early came into power, a lot of them became very far right or were military juntas very shortly after the revolution, especially if there was a Marxist group or a socialist group who was fighting for revolution as well. We kind of see this, in my personal opinion, we see this in Pakistan, where there was a huge Marxist movement, huge socialist movement post-Pakistani independence to kind of improve Pakistan in a more egalitarian manner. However, there was a ruling class of Pakistan, and many of them kind of transitioned and had links to the Pakistani military, who didn't necessarily want this because they could maintain a lot of power on top whilst also being like, look at us, we are nationalists, we are pro-Pakistan, which is why Pakistan very early on had multiple military juntas in charge. That's my analysis, applying some of the stuff from Rodney. I'm so smart! But honestly, this book, you should pick it up. It goes really well with How Europe Undeveloped Africa, because it makes reference to that writing as well. So I would read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa first, and then pick this up as kind of a supplementary thing. Also, if you're interested in kind of Marxism, but also you don't necessarily, those guys you sometimes see at universities who are Marxists of a certain ilk. I won't say much more, but yeah, highly, highly recommend. I've only read it once, so I'm sure I'm not like fully there yet. I'm going to read it. This is like one of those books you're going to read a few times. Yeah. So highly, highly recommend this book. And hey, thank you the person who commented that they wanted to have an actual video fully on this. Thank you for that recommendation. So, as always, link to the book is going to be in the description down below, linking to bookshop.org. Alternatively, get this book from your local library. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. And as always, I hope you read a great book today. Hat.